Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another story time. Today, we're going to be doing one of my favorite books known as The General. Right. So, The General. Right, let me just see that so I can make sure if anybody wants to join, and we can begin. Right. The General. There was once a general. His name was General Jodhpur, and he wanted to be the most famous general in the world and to have his army admired by generals from all the other countries. And so he kept his soldiers busy cleaning their weapons, pressing their uniforms, polishing their badges and boots. Every morning, very early, as soon as the sun was up, the soldiers had to be out on the parade grounds, smartly dressed, ready to practice marching. When they were finished marching, the soldiers divided into several groups. The cooks went to the kitchens to prepare the meals. The cavalry went to the stables to groom and feed the horses. The other soldiers went to the rifle range to practice shooting, and the officers made sure that the men did their jobs correctly. In the evening, when the camp was quiet, General Jodhpur liked to sit up late and read about all the other generals and about the famous battles their armies had won. How he longed for the day when he and his army would be so famous that a book would be written about them. One Sunday morning, whilst the General Jodhpur was riding in the country on his big white horse, a bright red fox ran across the path. The horse was so frightened that it reared up and threw the general to the ground, and then it galloped off into the forest. General Jodhpur was not hurt. He had landed on soft grass. The grass was so soft and smelt so sweet that, to his surprise, the general found that he did not want to move. He picked up a piece of grass, put it between his teeth, and lay back in the warm sunshine. After a long time, he decided that he ought to be getting back to camp. Reluctantly, he got to his feet and set off at a brisk march. Although he had ridden along this path many times, he now noticed things he had never seen before because he had been going so fast. He saw squirrels and rabbits and field mice and hedgehogs and swallows and wood pigeons and even a peacock. He heard the birds singing. All at once, the general came upon a field of beautiful flowers. Never had he seen such a wondrous sight. There were more kinds of flowers than he had ever imagined, and more colors than any artist had ever dreamed of. General Jodhpur stood quite still for a few minutes, and then he slowly walked across the field and sat down in the middle of the flowers. He watched the bees buzzing in and out, searching for pollen to make honey. He thought that one was sure to land on his nose, but the bees were far too funny to notice even a famous general. And look, there he is with the bees buzzing around. He watched the flowers and the bees for a long time. How peaceful it was. Why had he never noticed these things before? When at length he got up, he was dismayed to see that he had been sitting on some of the flowers. They looked sad and droopy. He did not want to leave the flowers, but he had to get back to his soldiers. So he decided to pick 2 flowers. When it was dark when the General Jodhpur finally reached the camp, he put the 2 flowers in a glass of water near the window of his room and went to bed. That night, he dreamt about the wonderful things he had seen during the day, the birds, the animals, the sun, the flowers. Then into his dream marched thousands of soldiers. They made such a dreadful noise that the birds and animals fled in terror. The soldiers trampled the lovely flowers flat. The general woke up furious. "Stop, stop," he shouted at the soldiers. Then he realized it was only a dream. He tried to go to sleep again, but he could not. He knew that he and his soldiers must have marched over thousands of beautiful flowers and frightened small animals many times. "I will never harm or frighten anything again," he said. "I will try to help the animals and tend the flowers and plants and all the other things that grow." In the morning, he told his soldiers that he wanted them to leave the army, return to their homes and jobs, and to help him make their country the most beautiful in the world. Everyone was so happy, but no one was more happy than General Jodhpur. The farmers started to plow their fields and sow seeds for the next harvest. The fishermen took their nets and went out to sea. The general ordered the builders to turn the army camp into a lovely city with shops and schools and parks where the children could play. General Jodhpur was very excited by all that was happening. When he visited his men to see how their work was progressing, and he did this every day, they were glad to see him. Can you see him up there at the top of the hill looking down on the fishermen? Each day he also went to the place where he'd first seen the flowers. It was winter time now, and the flowers were no longer there, but he liked to look at the field where they had been and feel the earth with his hands. He knew that the flowers would be back in the springtime. At last the winter was gone, the flowers returned to the countryside, new green leaves appeared on the trees, the seeds which the farmers had sown began to thrust their shoots through the soil. The corn grew tall and green, fruit ripened in the orchard. Every morning the fishermen sang as they took their boats out on the shining sea. One morning, General Jodhpur received 2 important-looking letters. One was from the famous General Nikolai Markovich from the eastern part of the world. The other was from the equally famous General Custard from the western part of the world. Both generals wanted to see for themselves the strange things which they had been told were happening in General Jodhpur's country. General Jodhpur at once invited them to visit him and inspect his country. When General Nikolai Markovich and General Custard arrived, they were greeted by General Jodhpur and a brass band. Then General Jodhpur proudly took the visitors all over his country. He showed them the orchards and the forests, the fields full of vegetables and grain, the fine city with its park and playground. The visiting general saw that the people regarded all animals as friends and never frightened or chased them. Finally, General Jodhpur took them to the place where he'd first seen the flowers. The fields for miles around seemed to be covered with a blanket of 1,000,000 colors. The 3 generals sat down carefully so as not to damage any of the flowers and smiled at one another. "This is a wonderful idea," said General Custard. "You have made your country the most beautiful in the world. And your people are certainly the happiest. added General Nikolai Markovich. And together they said, General Jodhpur, you are the most famous general in the whole world. And the most famous general in the whole world lay back amongst the flowers and smiled at the sun.